Christopher, Tom Hitchcock, how are you?
Hello, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you. I was going to introduce you with your surname, but I'm always mindful of mispronouncing surnames. What's the correct pronunciation?
So my surname is Maait, which is the anglicised version of a Lebanese name, which is Maait.
Yeah, okay. So, all right. If you was to ask me to have a stab in the dark where it's from, I would have said Dutch or something like that.
Yeah, most people do. Actually, I've had Dutch. I teach photography, and I have had a Dutch student come up to me and say, "Are you Dutch?" And the word actually in Dutch is maat, and it means man mowing lawn. If you do a Google search on me, you get these videos of men mowing lawns, you know.
Well, it's interesting that so when you get the Van der Vaart, Van der Sar and all that in Holland, okay, they all came from when the Dutch in the Netherlands had no surnames. They were just Paul, Pete, Sarah, or whomever. They didn't have family names, so they had to give them a name for, mowing the lawn, making clogs or whatever it may be. They all had names associated to what they did, and they've inherited that as their family name later. It's quite interesting when you look at their names. So I'm in this case, I'm Tom the podcaster.
Okay, well, that's fair enough. That's fair enough.
So anyway, I'm rambling on a little bit here. Thanks a lot for your time today. We're always appreciative of people giving us their time, but also being transparent with their story and what they want to share. You've already given a little bit of an inkling, and I can see in your background roughly what you do. I'd love to hear who you are, what you do, where you're going.
Okay. Well, I've been a professional photographer and teacher, an artist for the last 30 years. In fact, last month was my 30-year anniversary since I left college. Did a diploma of commercial photography, and that was interesting because I just always had an interest in that. A little bit behind that is I've had a fascination with science. So I did a Bachelor of Science for 3 years at Sydney University, and then took a year off and then did a photography degree because it's just always been an interest of mine. I'm a visual person. I observe a lot of stuff. And photography has been this wonderful melding of science and art for me, because you have to understand the physics of light and the chemistry involved in black and white photography and film photography and the physics of the camera, because they're instruments, and then being able to capture light in such a way that it looks interesting or creative, or so it's a really interesting melding of my mind, my heart, my eyes, and this technology that we have. And I work in commercial advertising. I've been bashing away at it for that long. So food, products, portraiture, places, you name it, fashion, photographed many things, been many places, particularly around Australia. And it's just an interesting job. And one of the most interesting things about it is I get to go to places where you don't normally go. I've been in, the back of foundries. I've been down gold mines. I've been, abseiling down cliffs in the Kimberleys. It's not like, you can just do that, but it was part of the job, and that makes it very exciting. And I can take it anywhere with me. So,
okay. All right. What I do like, and let's just say I wasn't listening there, which I was, okay, and it's just sort of going autopilot. People could hear and they don't necessarily listen, okay. But let's just say I was doing that. What I do find, and you've just highlighted this, and I've seen this with other people as well, is the passion behind a topic. So whether it's a hobby, whether it's a job, whether it's just something they're talking about, when they're really behind it, they don't need any help from me. They just get into the nuts and bolts of it, and you can see the change on the face when someone loves what they do. And it's quite endearing, because even if I wasn't listening, I would now want to listen to you. So I'm like, fascinating. This is actually really quite interesting. I never thought of it like that. So
that's always nice to hear, because you kind of you try to be a bit humble about these things, but I am very passionate about photography, and I've been teaching for just as long as I've been taking photographs. And one of the things I love is just sharing that information and getting people who know nothing about photography after, say, I used to teach an 8-week course, 2 hours a week, and at the end of it, they're like excited because, oh my God, my photos are really nice. My friends are saying that my photos are great. And for them, it's just the satisfaction of improving themselves a little bit. And that gives me great satisfaction as well. So, I just love it. And that's why I've been going at it for so long. It's a big part of me. And I enjoy being behind a camera. It's really strange. Henri Cartier-Bresson, famous photographer from the 40s and 50s, said that photography is putting one's heart, one's eye, and one's mind on the same axis. So when I look through a camera, I'm so focused, a truck could come and run me over.
Well, I'm glad you're still here.
Everything I can in there.
Okay. All right. Well, here's a thought for you. So, I remember when digital cameras came out, and I remember, like when someone had the first mobile, and wow, look at that! It can't ring anybody, can't it? There's no reception. But I remember when first thing had a digital camera, it was like fascinating. But now we've moved on significantly from then, and we've got smartphones. Okay, and the smartphones is all these apparatus in one place, hence the terminology. But the camera's a massive part of this. This is something that people, they focus a lot on, no pun intended, and to get the pixelation right and whatever tools with it. So they are good. Okay. Now, with that, people buying film cameras and the digital camera, or even digital cameras themselves, that seems to have gone amiss now, and it's saved for the professionals and getting the good gear. How much of an impact has the quality of smartphones had on what you do?
Wow. Yeah, look, it's had a big impact on the photography industry. I mean, I use my phone all the time to take photographs, because the best camera you've got is the one that you've got in your hand. And I see something interesting and I'll take a photograph of it. It's changed the accessibility to photography, like particularly when you merge it with the technology of social media and share stuff out there. That's certainly been an enormous explosion, particularly in the last 10 years. I learned on film. The first year of college, I had to do only black and white film because that was the basis of photography. Understanding light and tone and processing your own rolls and printing the prints and, the magic of having an image come up in the darkroom. It's really it's still magic. It's like it is a black magic. It's like, where did this come from? Put a bit of light, put a bit of chemistry, put a bit of paper, and all of a sudden I've got a photograph, and that has depth and physicality. But then merging into digital as the technology changed made huge impacts. A lot of professional photographers left the industry. They didn't want to. They didn't want to relearn how to use this equipment. A few photographers I worked with, spent all their money on digital equipment, but just never made it back, and went out of business because they had to buy you had to buy computers, you had to buy this, you had to buy printers, you had to. The interesting thing about technology is it made people go from a collaborative environment in terms of business. So if I can elaborate on that, when I worked with a couple of photographers in the studio, and we'd finish a job, go to the lab, talk to the lab people, drop the film off and then come back the next day to pick it up. But after we dropped the film off, we went to the pub and we talked to graphic designers and creative directors, and because people socialized in that setting and so forth. When digital came in, and it's same with your phone, like it's an all-in-one thing. So I had to become a retoucher, a developer, a graphic designer. I had to learn Photoshop. I had to learn how to print. And it isolated me from that collaborative environment, which was really interesting, especially in terms of business. I myself went through you would say a depression, because I lost contact with the people out, that I was working with and sharing information in that way. We didn't have Zoom then. So I'd go and do a job, which was 2 hours, and then I'd come back and then I'd spend 5 hours on the computer. And the same thing has happened with the phones. Now you're isolated on the phone. So I've got my phone, I take a photo, I'm sitting there by myself doing whatever I'm doing, editing the photo, uploading it to Instagram, whatever. That's something I've really noticed over the last 15 years in particular, since digital came in and leading up to the phones. And now we've got AI. I mean, I'm just touching on AI. Like it's really incredible. But ultimately, what I believe is that the basis of a good photograph is the photographer and how they understand light and capture it. But yes, to go back to your first point, sorry, I now seem to be rambling back and forth, but digital has made an enormous impact, and phones have changed a lot. I bumped into a journalist the other day, and we were just talking about how, excuse me, newspaper journalists, you don't need a journalist and a photographer. The journalist will go to another country, they've got their iPhone or whatever, and they take photos and then they upload their story, that night. It's gone. It's done. So, look, as anything, there's a duality to it all. There's these powerful tools, and then there's, detrimental effects of these powerful tools, and you've just got to navigate through that.
I think you raised quite an interesting point there with the collaborations and the things that people that don't do what you do wouldn't know about. We understand the dark rooms and that. We see them in movies. We might have even played them in schools, what have you. I remember I did. And you're quite right about the magic that there's almost like a romance around the lighting and seeing something come to life. And like, wow, my thumb's over it or something like that. So it's kind of high risk in some respects. So you made me think a little bit there. But obviously, as with any business, we evolve. We need to have some agility, is what you're saying. A lot of people did when they had to buy this digital equipment. Obviously, the big photography victim that didn't do this, the most famous one I can think of is Kodak. Obviously, it's a different realm to you, but they had the patents to do what they needed to do, and they didn't follow through with it, and they went down. But I'm still a fan of the traditional, the old school ways of doing it. And we've been talking about this quite a lot. We had a lady speaking with yesterday who's a cold call specialist. She's talking about having those conversations rather than text, email, WhatsApp, blah, 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 and going back and actually having a human interaction. And this sort of topics come back. And the way these things move, it makes the old school more appealing.
Yeah,
it has a nostalgic feel to it, and it has essentially a layer of quality. Okay, so it ends up being a point of difference rather than the way of doing it.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting because 6-7 years ago, what are we in now? 2024. So 7 years ago, I started looking at networking. So I ended up joining a networking group 7 years ago, and I was a bit reluctant, but I thought somebody had suggested to me that it's a good way to get out there and get my name. And then obviously with networking, you get to know, like, and trust people over time, and then they refer you to friends or whatever, and you refer them and that sort of thing. And that's been really interesting because I joined a group. I was the youngest in the group by far. And I thought, well, what am I doing with all these old people? But what I've learned from them is is their experience, and they've got wisdom, and they were in businesses for 25 years, but when I was in business for 20 years or 30 years. So all their experience and sharing the knowledge and doing talks and having breakfast with them fortnightly, it really made a big difference to me. So I feel I've grown as a small business, because it's all small businesses. And it's all from that collaborative, the conversations that you have, rather than Zooming people or WhatsApping people or messaging. We have all these forms of communication. They're all on our phone. I've got them all. They're all on their phone, but you can send someone a message, but they won't read it. And it's like, okay, they're probably busy. You need to go, yeah, that's okay, that's fine. Or you send someone an email and you don't get an answer back. Like, you sent me an email and I went, oh, you know what? Yeah, I'll give this a go. See what you just got to overcome I would say the technical overwhelm to go back to the basics, and that is meeting up with people, talking to them, shaking hands. And I think a lot of people are doing that because they miss that human interaction. Yeah. And I think that's good. We still have this technology, we're here meeting and chatting and getting to know each other, and that's useful in certain ways. But the traditional methods of doing business and talking to people still works today.
Yeah, I like your example with the networking, and where it's not necessarily the networking itself. It's almost like a sort of a by osmosis mentoring component, where you've learned from people that lived it, breathed it, maybe in different sectors and what have you. And it's those conversations that are priceless, and this is the spirit of where this has come from. So that you and I can have our first conversation, we can flesh out some topics. Someone somewhere in the world is going to listen to this, and the light bulb's going to go bing, 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 and it's going to change their business, going to change their life in some respects. That there's many, many takeaways, and that's why I like to record this and share this with as many people as possible. Okay, all right. So, what about the quality? Is there something? I'm being sticking on the same subject here with the photography. So we've got iPhone, the latest iPhone, I think it's titanium something or another, and your professional quality camera, film camera. Is there something apart from the magic part of it? Okay, is there something that your film camera can do that your iPhone cannot? Is there a quality component?
Yeah, definitely. There's depth. There's a physical depth to the photograph, because I printed. So I taught black and white photography for many years, and I had two students, a brother and a sister. One was he was a psychiatrist, and she was a surgical nurse, and they came literally for 10 years, term after term after term, and I watched them evolve. And we started printing on fiber-based paper. That's the highest quality paper that black and white printing has, because it has a very thin layer of chalk in it, essentially, underneath the emulsion. And when you look at it, it reflects more light through the image. But when you look at a fine art print, so film has depth. It's an acetate base with an emulsion on the top, and there's silver halide crystals, which then get converted to silver in the black and white process through the chemistry and everything. So even though it's tiny, there's depth to the negative. It's got a thickness to it. And then you magnify that onto a piece of paper, which has got thickness to it. It's got a thick paper base, the bitar, which is the white chalk, and then the emulsion. And when you've worked with this print and you look at it, it's physically deep. You're like looking into an image. And even though digital is excellent now, like it's in some ways superior to film, it doesn't have that depth, that physicality. It's kind of like I don't know how, like holding a negative. Go back a step. We're physical beings, you know. We've evolved to hold and touch and taste and smell, and our brain is like incredible. When you do reading about the brain, or you listen to podcasts about the brain and what it can do, and our bodies and what it can do, but just holding a negative, a little strip, and photography, film photography, it has a preciousness about it, because you've also only got 36 shots on a roll, for example.
Yeah.
So you've got to make them good.
Yeah.
You've got to make them good. And that's why I love the fact that I learned on film, because I shoot digital in the same way. Because you can do 450 shots, but then you've got to spend 8 hours editing through them. You're better off doing 22 shots and spending an hour really massaging them and enhancing them.
Yeah.
So film has that quality, that physicality about it.
I do like the idea that these that there's a limit to the film. So the ladies go to their bathroom and do their trout pouts, and another. You know, it's cheap.
Yes.
It's they might delete them all. They might only like one. They might stand there for another 5 minutes doing a few more, just clicking, because it's almost limitless.
Yes.
You know? I like the fact that you've only got this amount of shots. Make it count. When you press that button, it's some real thought and purpose, and all the axis points that you're talking about come together in one.
Yeah. And what's really interesting is digital photography is disposable. And what I mean by that is, the other day I was cleaning out some boxes and I found some old photos from 1990, and I'm looking at them, and they weren't great, you know, but in the background you can see someone, you go, oh yeah, I remember them. Yeah. You know, or oh my God, I haven't seen them for 20 years. With digital, people delete. Those memories are gone. It's a really interesting comparison between the physical print that you've got in your hand, the 4x6 that you had printed 20 years ago, compared to what's happening on your digital camera. So there's a lot of aspects in that area of memory. One interesting fact that I heard is that children from the last 15 years or 20 years are the most photographed children in the world, right? There've never been more photographs of these kids anywhere, but there's no physical photographs. There's more physical photographs from the early 1900s of children than there are of children today. It's really interesting.
And you know what? That's depressing. That is depressing. I remember going through old photo books and looking at family that I've never met and what have you, and going through all these things. And you're quite right. Sometimes the lack of qualities, the imperfections, is what makes it perfect.
That's right. And that's another part of the magic of photography, is that it's imperfect. You can make a mistake, and then you look at it and you go, actually, that's really cool. You know, you've got too much blur or something, you've put it on the wrong setting, and you just go, oh, wow, I might keep that.
Actually, you know what? I wonder, with these imperfections, I wonder if pictures of so-called ghosts have now gone down, now that those imperfections are not happening anymore.
I don't know. I've seen a few photos that maybe not so much with digital, but yeah, I remember retouching a photograph some years ago for a family friend, and it looked like it had a ghost of a little boy in the photograph, and nobody knew who it was. And that was a black and white photograph. But I digitized it and I was retouching it. I'm thinking, well, who's that? Like, you could see this sort of little figure, and
but you don't really get that in digital. Sure, I can't. It's not something that's sort of up there. I don't know.
No, look, I think you can, but one of the things people think that it's maybe retouched or photoshopped, or so there's a sort of a confusing information about what a digital photograph can entail. And so in order to prove that it's a true photograph, you need to say, this photo has not been retouched. This is the original photograph, whereas with a black and white photo, you would look at it and you don't doubt that that's the original photograph. It's very interesting mindset between the two.
Okay, all right. Well, there's certainly some depth to the discussion on photography. So anybody listening to this video, whether it be in a year's time or whatever, they resonate with your story, what you do, and they want to make contact with you, how would they contact you, Christopher?
Oh, well, my business name is Maaitphoto. Maaitphoto.com.au is my website. I have a Chris Maaitphoto page on Instagram, and Chris Maait or Maaitphoto. I've got both personal Chris Maait and a Maaitphoto on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn as well. So
fantastic. Okay, well, listen, hopefully people will reach out, and it's beneficial to yourself. I imagine the conversations would be good. I've enjoyed every moment of this one. Thanks again for your time, Christopher.
No, that's a pleasure. Thanks for your time, Tom. I appreciate it. You reaching out to me and just giving me this opportunity to share a little bit of what I know.
You're most welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching this episode. I hope that you did enjoy it, had lots of takeaways from it. As before, please subscribe below so you can keep on top of any new releases we have. And also, if you would like to have your story told, just reach out with me and I'd love to give you that platform. My best email address is tom@purplepatchconsulting.com. Thank you.